Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Good evening. Welcome to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Lindsey Davis Stover. We have a fun show tonight. My two guests, Michelle Woolley and Candice Bennett, are with us this evening. They are the hosts of the Virginia Badass podcast. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, tell us a little bit about your experience and kind of what led you to start a podcast like this. Candice, tell us about your experience.
So actually, Michelle and I know each other, and we know you
Yes.
through our experiences in Emerge Virginia. We were in the class together in 2017. I actually had been a candidate for office in 2015, but after President Trump was elected, the next morning came in, signed up that application, and got started in the class. But so I've got active, obviously, little bits here and there, and then last January, or no, actually 2017, or 2018. I got started with Fairfax County Democrats as the Vice Chair of Finance, so I've been doing the fundraising for the county party for 2 years now. It's coming to an end, and also serving on the board for Democratic Business Council of Northern Virginia, DemBiz. And so my activity the past couple of years has been kind of in the organizational side of things, but I know Michelle's actually gotten a little bit more activity on the campaign.
Yes. Tell us a little bit about your background and experience.
So I'm a former labor and employment and civil rights attorney, and the Emerge Virginia class, being in that room with all these incredible women who are politically engaged, really inspired me to shift my career. And so I went into working on the campaign side, and I first worked on the campaign of Elizabeth Bennett Parker, who's now vice mayor of the city of Alexandria. And then I was the campaign manager for Parissa Dagani Tafty's campaign for Commonwealth's attorney in Arlington and the city of Falls Church. I just got really involved, really deep into those campaigns, and really enjoyed the experience. And so I've been doing some other political things as well now, and also involved with labor union stuff as well. I'm co-chair or chair of our Nova Labor Women group as well, so doing a lot of labor work as well.
That's great. And your podcast is appropriately titled Virginia Badass Podcast. And I have to say, knowing the two of you as well as I do, I can't think of a better name. The two of you are badass women. So tell us a little bit about how you decided to come up with this podcast.
So there was a couple of things that happened during the spring primary that was going on both in Fairfax and Arlington. I was not really active in any of the campaigns because as the county vice chair for fundraising, I didn't want to have favorites in any of those horse races. So, but the Washington Post came out with their endorsements in the all the county supervisor races for Fairfax County, and I was horrified because we had 20 candidates and we had 10 women running, which is epic, right? 50% of our candidates were women, and all but one of the endorsements were men, and the women candidates were equally qualified. And then we started to dig into asking folks what had happened during the endorsement process that they went through, to come to find out that actually most of the candidates never even had an interview, that they were fairly selective in who they even talked to in those races. Even though there were potentially 4 or 5 candidates, they only talked to 2 in every single race. They deliberately did talk to a woman in every race. However, the questions that they were asking the women were patronizing, perfunctory, offensive.
Yes, they were.
So we started to get into it, and I was horrified. So I actually wrote a response to the process and was like, basically, this is not a process at all. And it really is specific to Fairfax County. Most people are not very well versed in like how the endorsement process works, and that it's actually like there's one person that's in charge of Fairfax County, there's a different writer that's in charge of Arlington County, and so there's actually an individual with their own biases kind of coming in and putting their thumb on these races. And once you start to dig into it, it's not fair. It's in a very unfair process. But anyway, so I wrote this op-ed, actually got several other people to sign on to it. And so I was really kind of very riled up. And then I was in Panera getting breakfast one day, and I got this text message from Michelle, and there was some ranting about to happen.
Yeah, and so I mean, we just had some different experiences on my campaign, and we had noticed that a lot of the, just having been involved in different campaigns, is that there's a lot of men who kind of are gatekeepers on the political commentary in Virginia, and being like, hey, we have all these women doing great things. Let's have a space that's just kind of focused on them and uplifting what they're talking about and is focused on that, as opposed to having to go through these other folks. I'm like, we don't have to do that. We're in the age of podcasts, and anybody can start a blog or all these other things. And so just to kind of have that space. So
that's great. And so the podcast really gives a platform, a different platform, especially for women. And talk a little bit about why that's so important right now. Like, why does this moment right now require, in a sense, for us to have that type of platform, especially for women?
Well, I think one of the things that's really important, and you hit on it with the the post process and stuff, and the kind of questions women get asked, as opposed to that men don't get asked, and the things that they don't get to highlight, and that they have to focus talking about, oh, who's going to take care of the kids, or why don't you have kids, or whatever those questions are, and being able to focus on, what are your strengths? Let's talk about this. Maybe you don't get asked this question a lot. Let's talk about something else other than, the standard fare. And I think that that's really important when you have so many women, different women bringing things to the table right now politically in Virginia.
Well, and those questions actually make families, children, or potentially parents sound like liabilities as a candidate or an elected official. And the reality is that's actually why women are running, right? That it is because of our children, or it's because of these issues that our parents are going through, that we are standing up and saying, enough is enough, I'm done, we're gonna say something about it. And so, yeah, I think we can actually ask those questions in a different way.
Yes, and I think what we've really strived to do so far too is to just be, what do you want? What do you want to talk about? We don't have to we have a very conversational chat aspect to the podcast, and it's, let's, what do you want to highlight that's not getting, what's not getting through in your messaging, because of all this other clutter and everything else that's out there. So.
I know that you've interviewed Kate Ranta, and we actually had her on our podcast as well as our second guest, and that was one of the things we talked about. So what are you usually asked? What are you wishing that other people would ask you about? And so that's what we focused on. And she got to talk about some elements of the story that don't get a lot of highlight, that are just as important as the the dramatic part of the shooting. But at the same time, it was actually, I think, some of the damage she was having to go through and relive through the whole family court process, what she was going through in dealing with the bureaucracy in the military. And I think raising a light on that was very important.
Absolutely. And I think the framework in which the two of you bring is so important too. And you're very modest when speaking about your experience, but you have had incredible professional experience to bring to the table as entrepreneur, as a lawyer, fundraiser, someone who, both of you have been so active in national and local politics. And so you bring all of those experiences to a kind of format that really benefits women, because you're right, you're not asking them, so did your husband give you permission to run, right? You're not asking them who takes care of their kids in the evening. You're asking them about their experience. And I think that's what's so incredible and unique about what the two of you are doing. It's really remarkable.
And it's fun.
Yeah,
I'm having
and
fun.
we do. We have a lot of fun. So
That's great. That's great. Now tell us, I know you mentioned Kate was on the show talking about domestic violence issues, those types of things. What other topics have you covered, and what topics do you want to cover in the future?
Well, our first episode was with Fatima O'Mara, who had a great perspective on national politics. So, we were talking about actually the Virginia election, because we got together right before the November election, and we're kind of talking about the races that we were watching, and obviously we were excited about some of the ones that did come out the way we wanted them to, and some that didn't. And then we talked to Larissa Kautz actually 2 weeks ago, and she talked about her experiences as running as a candidate, as well as kind of the things that she's doing now, kind of post-candidate life, and which is always fun because there is a come down period. You know it, I know it. It's really hard to explain it to someone who hasn't been a candidate, or even as
you see it as a
campaign, like as a campaign manager. I mean, you are breathing and living and eating nothing but campaign, every single day, and the day after the election, and you're literally wake up and it's like, now what?
Right.
It's a unique experience.
It really is, and that's the experience people don't talk about a lot. Right, especially women, because I think you experience it different as a woman.
Absolutely.
Right. I know when you and I talked about kind of the coming down period, it's not like you can say, "I'm sorry, but I can't help you with your homework tonight because I'm taking it," right, and you're going back to jobs, and I mean all of these things. Life is still there, and you still have to get up and show up every day, and that sometimes is what people don't talk about. So that was a great episode that you all had.
And we're hoping to get some, we're open to, we have, any women, badass women who want to be on, and people who love badass women.
Yes.
We're hoping we're going to have an episode on the ERA coming up. We're, going to be talking to some different, women that are doing all sorts of things politically and non-politically across Virginia. So
we've got someone who wants to talk about the fact that women are underrepresented in our history curriculum throughout our education, right?
Oh,
so
fantastic.
She's actually done the count, and basically women represent 13% of historical figures in our history curriculum across 13%. K through 12. And that's only if you count single mentions, and she said it actually drops to 10% when you start to look at double mentions. Isn't that horrifying?
That is horrifying.
Right? It's not about actually putting men down, but it's really, there are so many more women that are not in these stories that we need to be elevating.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, there's a lot right now, and I'm sure topic-wise, when you're thinking about future episodes, there's a lot to rage about right now, right? So tell me a little bit, as we kind of finish up this segment, and we'll go and continue it in the next one, tell me about what is your constant rage right now? I mean, not your rage for the moment or the day, but is there a rage inside of you right now that really fires you up all the time?
I think, one of the things for me is just when women are underestimated, our roles and our value is diminished. And I think that's something, our stories are diminished. And that's the thing that just consistently just angers me, no matter what the issue is, in different angles, and that's really a big thing for me that's ongoing.
Yes. Well, we'll continue talking about what makes you rage right now when we come back, but please continue to stay with us. We are talking with the hosts of the Virginia Badass Podcast, which you can find on iTunes. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hennessy's window.
Correction, dude. You broke. I just threw the ball.
This is really bad. What are we gonna do?
We? Go to the door, ask for the ball back.
Are you serious?
It's my ball, Myrtlebeck.
You're so dead. I'd run away.
Yeah, to Uruguay.
Kiss your life goodbye. Sorry.
Let's go. See ya, dude. See ya. Remember me and your well.
Nice life. Some friends you are. Hi. Hi. Tell him it was an accident. And we can fix the window. Come on. I'll come with you.
Loyalty. Pass it on.
You go first.
A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
One day these rats were playing in the woods. Well, it's some matches and that's no good. Listen to smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about rooftop fight. Nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
awkward. I'm the awkward silence. You try to avoid me, then there I am again.
But an awkward silence can be a great thing.
Like Kelly here is about to demonstrate.
You haven't really been yourself lately. Are you okay?
Find out how you can help a friend with their mental health at seizetheawkward.org.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Lindsey Davis Stover, and we're continuing our conversation with Candice Bennett and Michelle Woolley, talking about what topics right now make you rage. Candice, tell us about what topics are making you rage right now, if you can just pick one, right?
Yeah. Right. Well, that's the thing. You sent me this question earlier, and I was thinking about it. I was like, I can't even have an answer because every 30 minutes I will have another issue to rage about.
Yes,
right?
I hear you.
I will say, though, right now I'm raging about Lisa Page, and she actually had an interview with Politico this weekend, and she's right. I mean, I'm really glad that she's done being quiet and that she is speaking out on the abuse that she's been facing from the president for the past 2 years. It is mortifying. It is ridiculous. It's disgusting, and no one should have to put up with that. And especially from supposedly the leader of the free world. I mean, he's disrespecting the office when he behaves like this, and it's. Again, his treatment of her is so different from the treatment of Peter Strzok, right? And it's just endemic of all the other behavior that he has shown over time, where he really does disrespect women far more than he disrespects men when they're his quote opponents. So, her interview really just got me riled up, and I would love to have Lisa Page on our podcast, and she can rage all she wants.
Right. Well, I mean, you have right now, right? We have a president who openly bragged about sexually assaulting women. I mean, it's mind-boggling. I mean, it just really.
Where do you start?
Yes, and so when she talked about it, it doesn't surprise you, right? That she has experienced that from the leader of the free world.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
Speaking of Trump, let's talk 2020. Let's talk the candidates, the Democratic candidates, the many Democratic candidates that are running for president. Tell me about what you think about it. I mean, is it a good thing that Democrats have so many candidates running, or does that in a way hurt the Democrats' chances of beating Trump? What do y'all think?
I think it's great, actually. I think we need to have new blood in the race, and part of getting new blood, even at any level of higher office, is actually just throwing your hat in the ring and getting a chance to have a platform and speak your mind on what's going on in the world. So I think it's good that voters are going to have a choice. Obviously, the media is playing right into the hands of their Russian handlers, I guess, at this point. They're just constantly browbeating candidates as far as, do voters really have a choice? Are they differentiating themselves? And, just let it be. This race will settle out. President Obama came out recently and was like, chill, Democrats need to chill. I agree. Democrats need to chill. This will settle out. We will have a nominee. And I think most Democrats will get behind that nominee because there is no way a Democrat could possibly go into a voting booth in November 2020 and vote for President Trump. Seriously, right? You would vote for any of those candidates at this point. Don't vote for the third party, but vote for the Democrat. I think that I've been frustrated with obviously how the media is certainly treating our women candidates, especially I think Kamala Harris has been getting, she gets a moment in the limelight and then it kind of then they turn around and beat her up for it. So that's been frustrating. So I don't know. Michelle, what do you think?
I think, generally I think it's good that we have all these options, but I think the downside of that is that it's hard to focus in on one person, and I think there's some messages getting lost. I was a little bit disappointed to see Steve Bullock from Montana had dropped out. I don't know that he was going to be the person that I was going to be excited about, but I'd heard good things about him, and I kind of wanted to hear more, and I just felt like he got lost, because there were just so many people. And I think that, Kirsten Gillibrand, I was excited about her early on, and I think there were a variety of reasons why her campaign wasn't successful. But again, I think there were just, if you had 10 people instead of 20, over 20 people, I think maybe she would have gotten a little more traction as well.
I mean, a competition of ideas really is what we're seeing play out. And I know you spoke a little bit about how the experience for women running for president is different. Michelle, can you talk a little bit about that too? I mean, what are you seeing as well when it comes to the women candidates?
I think sometimes we talk a lot about, I think we're seeing a shift too, and about how women candidates are treated. And I think some of this stuff, it's not the same like in your face kind of aspects of it. It's not as obvious, I think, as it used to be. And some of the things, it's just about an appearance. Like somebody was talking to me about how Kamala Harris dresses, and that she kind of has these like suits, like very, like it wasn't in a negative way, just commenting on like her suits. And I'm like, I think she probably dresses in these like, just power bland, like just kind of neutral colored suits because she came up as a prosecutor at a time where, and it was a kind of male dominated, got to be tough. And that's her armor, right? And so I think you see that, and you see, Elizabeth Warren has her uniforms, but they're all very crisp and polished, as opposed, and everybody's talked about, Bernie gets out there with his, bushy hair and like is a little bit messy. Sherrod Brown isn't running for president, but he's a little bit, as a senator, that's kind of also his thing, is a little bit of this like little frazzled look. And like the women candidates just can't look that, they just can't. You don't even see it. Nobody comments on it because they don't even broach that, right? So,
and it seems like this cycle, kind of the male candidate's uniform, if you will, has been a button-up shirt with the sleeves rolled up, no tie, right? Just more casual. And I do see there's different expectations for the women running. There isn't necessarily that uniform kind of polished look that the men are pulling off this cycle. It's very different, very different. Well, let me ask, do you have a favorite of the vast majority of candidates running?
Well, most people know that my favorite's already pulled out. I was obviously, I was supporting our fellow Texan, Beto, but actually right now, I'm definitely pulling for Kamala, I think, right now. I like her messages, and she says a lot of things that resonate for me, so I really do want to see her come out strong in these beginning races.
That's great. Do you have a favorite, Michelle?
I kind of bounce around, like depending on the day. I frequently end up, Elizabeth Warren has been one that I come back to. And I think there's a lot for me, like in her story, that just resonates as well. So like,
she's an incredible story.
She does. She has this incredible story. And there's just a lot of that, like when she'd had her little like, film on her Aunt Betsy coming out to like do to take care of her kids so that she could be a professor, and I was like, I felt that, I was like, I feel so like needing that kind of help, and so I feel some of it's not necessarily her policy, it's just that I connect with that. But I think there's a lot of good, like I see good things in all of them. I can say good things about Bernie. I can say good things about Kamala and Pete Buttigieg and so I think any of them I'm there for. I was like, just wait, everybody else figure out who you're there for, and then I'm like, all right, I'm good.
Well, that's the thing too. Everyone's talking about how many candidates the Democrats have, right? But we have a lot of really great candidates. I mean, every candidate up there is fantastic, and many believe, is far better than the president we have now. So that kind of leads me to the next question. Do you think any Democrat up there right now can beat Trump?
I think every Democrat up there can beat Trump. And I think that's one of the things that, again, frustrates me with the media, like, talking points, is there seems to be this idea that there's electability. I don't think it's a thing. I think that's like a made-up thing. I say that as a consultant. It's ridiculous, especially when candidates are authentic. I mean, you're electable if you're authentic, if you were yourself.
Yeah. So electability meaning too, because I want to explain that for the viewers as well, meaning the only person, the argument that they're the only person that can win the race. Yeah.
I think, again, they all are good candidates, and I think they all could beat Trump. I think it's really a matter of the ground game, and I think that's one of the things that got lost in 2016. I mean, obviously she had the the most votes. But, you know, there was some missed opportunities in the key states. And I think that, you know, when you're running a campaign, just whether it's small or big, you're counting all of the votes, right? You have to make sure you're not missing a county, a district, a precinct, a state that, you know, could bring it home. I think one of the things I was, again, excited about for Beto was what he did in Texas last year. And really, he visited every single county in Texas, and a Democrat has not done that in years. And Democrats showed up for him. And not only did they show up for him, but they showed up and then voted for all of the down ballot races. And so we saw some generational change in Texas that now has Republicans scared in the state. And so while I know he's obviously out of the race now, and I know that we've got some ridiculous folks that are asking him to run for Senate, we have some strong candidates running for Senate against John Cornyn. I mean, MJ Hager is amazing. And again, one of those things where it's like, Beto's great. But why should he get into a race where we've already got a candidate, a strong woman, a veteran who could beat John Cornyn, right?
Well, I think you made an important point, generational change, because we're seeing so many Republicans retire now, too. And I do believe that it's important for Democrats to be able to win everywhere, not just in the vote-rich populated areas, but everywhere. And that does require showing up and having a good message. And Michelle, you mentioned how Elizabeth Warren's message resonates with you. In a time when there's so much cynicism and people are so busy, how do Democrats get a powerful, impactful message to people that need to hear it?
Well, I think, you know, and part of this is, you mentioned this authenticity, and I think that's, people have to feel that, and it's not, that's that authentic kind of sincerity. Yeah. That's, I mean, Joe Biden is so good at that, and is really good at conveying that. And I think, you know, that's something you innately have. I don't think that's something that everybody's just good at on their own. I think that, like, something Hillary Clinton, I think, actually even talked about that was harder for her to do than her husband was really good at that, right? And so I think that's like one of the important things, is just being able to, and you can't quantify, it's not something you can quantify, it's not something, you know, you just have to kind of feel it, you know, when you're there in that room. And I think that's the hard, you know, I think that's the big question mark. And when you ask, like, if any of those people on that stage, any of those Dems can win, you know, I think that's to me the big thing, you know, and that's why I think Obama won in 2008. I think that's why he got a lot of people. I mean, I was knocking on doors for him in Appalachian, Ohio.
Wow.
And and I mean, I was going up and I talked to a guy it was in a trailer park, and he was a former KKK member, and he was voting for Barack Obama.
Wow.
Yes. And and so, he lost friends over it, but he was like, no, I feel that, like, I respond to him. And so,
what an example of an authentic message really touching people's lives. And that's the most important thing, is we're able to touch people's lives. Well, please stay with us. We'll be right back and continue this conversation.
Your time is gonna come. Your time is gonna come. It's up to you to reach out to, be that friend who comes along. Your day is gonna come.
When you make a friend, you make a difference.
Your day is gonna come.
Friendship. Pass it on. A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
Good one, son.
Last summer, my new dad took me on vacation. First, we went deep sea fishing. Wow!
I'm so proud of you, son.
And then we went on Thunder Shark. That was awesome! Let's go again. 3 times. I gotta say, it was pretty cool.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of kids in foster care will take you just as you are.
What's it feel like when a woman's having a heart attack? Chest pain, like there's a ton of weight on your chest. Severe shortness of breath. Unexplained nausea. Cold sweats. There's an unusual tiredness and fatigue. There's unfamiliar dizziness or lightheadedness. Unusual pain in your back, neck, jaw, one or both arms, even your upper stomach are signs you're having a heart attack. Don't make excuses. Make the call to 911 immediately. Learn more at womenshealth.gov/heartattack.
Operation Wonder Park is a go!
There's nothing more powerful than imagination.
Honey, have you seen my cell phone?
But don't just imagine.
My park came to life?
Ooh, a plot twist.
Use STEM to build, create.
She did it.
And change the world.
Who's with me?
I'm more of a 2 feet on the ground kind of guy.
It's gonna hurt tomorrow.
If she can STEM, so can you. Find out more at She Can STEM.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Lindsey Davis Stover, and we're continuing our conversation on politics with Candice Bennett and Michelle Woolley, who are the hosts of Virginia's Badass podcast. Thank you again for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
And I know we have talked federal politics. Let's bring it home to Virginia. Let's talk Virginia politics post-election. How do you y'all think about the results and the outcome? And that's a big question, right? I mean, we have so many races, but overall, I mean, are you generally happy with how things turned out?
Absolutely. We took over the General Assembly, so that's huge. I mean, again, generational change happened in November,
Huge.
Just a month ago here. Obviously, we're very, sad about some races that were, I was, sad that Linda Sperling didn't pick up the Springfield seat here in Fairfax County, but she ran an amazing race, and that hadn't been a contested race in forever.
Years, yeah.
Right? But at the same time, Laura Jane Cohen, beat Elizabeth Schultz, and that was exciting. And again, speaking to the Washington Post endorsement process, that was a complete mess. And, they had endorsed the independent candidate, and simply they're like, well, both candidates, are kind of equal, but we'll give him the slight edge because he'd worked in Pat Harrity's office. That seemed ridiculous.
Right.
So I was really excited to see that she won soundly. That school board seat. So the whole school board is blue, and I'm excited about that.
Good, good. Talk a little bit about the Commonwealth's attorney race that everyone has been so excited about.
I mean, it's just kind of an interesting thing. I mean, who would have thought, this idea that, these are the hot races, these prosecutor races, right? And, at the beginning of the campaign with Parissa, it's you'd go into a room, you'd tell people she's running for Commonwealth's attorney, and they'd think you were talking about the Attorney General for Virginia, And so, for me, it was those races were really fun because I think we got, across Northern Virginia, and then there was one down in Chesterfield as well, that we had this really educational process and people really engaging and learning about the criminal justice system and their local systems and different things that are going on in those offices and how they function and who they benefit, who gets different treatment. And I think that was really exciting. And so obviously we had some good wins across Northern Virginia. Buta out in Loudoun, I'm a big fan of hers. Parissa in Arlington, Steve Toscano here in Fairfax. There's a switch up in Prince William with Amy Ashworth. There's some others scattered around, and I'm just really excited to see what that's going to mean now that we have these folks out there who are these reform folks, and they're committed to reforming the criminal justice system, and you've got a critical mass of them. I am really sad about Scott Miles did not win re-election in Chesterfield. He won a special election last year. He was on the ballot with Abigail Spanberger, and I think that might have helped. She had a down ballot effect that helped him, and they just weren't able to get reelected, and I was really sad about that one because he was a really great Commonwealth's attorney. But I'm excited to see what happens. I think we're going to have change, and it's going to shift other people, who might have, and we have some other people in there too. Stephanie Morales in Portsmouth has been, ahead of the game too on reform, and so I just think you're going to have exciting things happening in Virginia, in the South on criminal justice reform, which I don't think is where people think that's going to be happening. And I'm like, nope, we're leading, we're leading here too. So
well, it's exciting because I feel like our state has led the way time and time again, right? Right after the presidential in 2016, into this last year as we head into, the 2020 race. Virginia all eyes have been on Virginia. And it's exciting because I think it has elevated so many of the local races into somewhat of a national kind of just seen, right? I mean, who would have ever thought we could take the Commonwealth's attorney in 4 key areas, right? In Northern Virginia.
And those races, we had national attention. Like I thought when I was signing up to manage this campaign, I was like, okay, this is a local thing. And then it just like blew up into this whole thing. And it was just, I mean, it's incredible. Like it's an incredible time, I think, to be involved in politics, especially Democratic politics in Virginia. And it's, who would have thought?
And we've got a lot of great women that were elected. And I think that is what is so exciting. Amy Ashworth-Paris has been on the show as well. I mean, just incredible women. Buddha's been on the show. I mean, we were just able to really do well, I mean, county and statewide when it comes to electing women across the Commonwealth.
Well, we're going to have our first majority leader is a woman with Delegate Eileen Florkhorn, and that's exciting.
Speaker, yes.
Speaker, yes.
That's right, that's right. And I think that in itself is going to create such change. I mean, what does that mean to the two of you, to have the first woman elected speaker here in the Commonwealth?
I think it signals change. We actually haven't had women at the state level in leadership yet, and which is crazy. You and I are from Texas, and we kind of think, Texas, kind of behind the times. At the same time, though, we were in Texas with Ann Richards, right?
Wendy Davis, right?
I mean, and there were women before them as well. I mean, strong. I mean, even on the Republican side, you had Kay Bailey Hutchinson. It was a strong woman, and yet here in Virginia, just waiting, just waiting. And so apparently, I think we're done doing things the Virginia way.
Explain what the Virginia way is. What does that mean to you? Because that is a phrase I think that gets used quite a bit. What does that mean to the two of you?
I think I Googled this once, and it's like, and the answer was like, nobody really knows.
Nobody knows. But it is a phrase that is commonly used, right?
But I think it's this idea that you're supposed to have like this kind of genteel, like it's a little bit more genteel, like political conversation. You wait your turn, you go through the system. And I think we're blowing that up right now, and I think that's a good thing.
That's a great thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So no more Virginia way, huh?
No more Virginia way. No more Fairfax way.
No more Arlington way. Whatever those are.
Whatever
we're not
they
going
are,
to.
Right?
We have something to say, and then it's time to say it.
Well, I think women are stepping up time and time again to do just that, right? If ever there was a time to put the way things have always been done to a side, right? It's women are going to be the ones to stand up and do that, and I think that's exciting for us right now.
Absolutely.
I think these elections, what got me excited about these, there were some concerns and some disappointments I had with this election, and we'll kind of see how the General Assembly, some of the things I care about, like on labor issues, I'm really paying attention to those kinds of things. But one of the things that has me excited about is like, okay, we've got our first woman speaker. Like we need, there's women that are talking about throwing their hat in the ring for governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general in 2021. And I am really excited. And some of those are women of color who are terrific, amazing candidates. And just how that statewide leadership is going to just look. There's the potential for it to look very, very, very different. And I think that just makes it. I don't know, it's just very exciting to see that and be a part of it.
Yes. Well, and two, with Democrats taking control, right, and Virginia, there also is a great responsibility that comes with that, right? I mean, all of the things that people said on the campaign trail, right? I mean, now it's our time, right, to figure out whether or not we can get those things passed. Do you think voters will keep the elected officials accountable to those campaign promises? I mean, do you think Democrats will keep fellow Democrats accountable?
Well, so, this week that went out, there was the Virginia Grassroots Coalition, which is a coalition of these progressive groups. Like they put out a letter, with, hitting like, we're still expecting you to be, you promised us on this, these progressive ideas. One of them was repealing right to work, which is an issue that I'm involved in.
Yes.
And so, that they've already put that out there, and all of these groups, local Democratic parties signed on, and different, progressive groups. And so I think they're really looking to push the folks that, hey, we came up, we helped get you elected. We were out there knocking doors. We donated money. We, did all this effort, and so that they're already out there pushing them on that. So we'll see how that plays out.
That's great.
I think that we'll see a lot of we'll see promises being kept with our new elected officials because they are new, right?
Sure.
This is why they got elected. This is why they ran. I think that with some of our probably more senior electeds, I think they're a little bit more jaded about the process, and I think they're more likely to potentially waffle on some of these issues that, quite frankly, we're done waffling on.
Yeah. Well, I know there's such a kind of just flood of activism and organizing right around the elections. And now that we're more into the governing space, well, we do have elections in Virginia every year, right? But now we are a little bit more in the governing space. How do you think people can stay involved and be active participants in the policymaking process, not just in the election process, but the policymaking process?
It's actually really hard. You know, we're engaged, we pay attention, and actually it's really hard to stay on top of everything that's kind of coming out of the General Assembly. They have a really challenging process for how they introduce bills, how they get them through the committee, how they get them onto the floor. Honestly, I don't even, I know that many of our electeds, quite frankly, don't even read the bills before they vote on them, right? There's a little bit of like, who's voting on this? Okay, you're voting on it, all right, that's how we're gonna vote. Not necessarily fully paying attention to what's in the bill because there's so many of them
bills.
It's crazy.
It's like one every 3 minutes or something. Like that's how it averages out. The amount, it's like something like crazy like that. The amount that's introduced. It's
I'd like to see if they could think about how could we change the process in a way that could get more thought, both from our electeds as well as more engagement from our citizens in the process, right? So I don't know what that answer is, but there needs to be a better way of getting access. I mean, I know how to research what bills are coming up for committee vote today, or because I've gone down and done a Richmond Day a couple of times each session just to, check out issues, especially like housing, something I pay attention to. And then if there's an issue that's also near and dear to my heart that's kind of up on the floor that day, I'll certainly raise my hand and go see some of the electeds that I know down there. But it's hard. I'd say pick a topic that you're really passionate about, and maybe just look to see, go on to the General Assembly website and search, see what bills have been introduced, and read through the language and just take the time, even if you're just reading through one or two bills, just to introduce yourself to the process. I think that's a way to get started, to get your feet wet, because it is hard.
It is hard. It is hard. And it's hard to, for people to take off work to get down to Richmond, right? And so you do have to find a way to track it online as well. And I think it's important too to not just stay involved at the state level, but talk about how people can get involved at the county levels and school board levels too as well.
Similar process, just with the county, they've got board meetings every couple of weeks, so knowing what's on the agenda, paying attention to what's going on in your magisterial district. Just read the local newspapers. The Connection is a good resource across the different districts.
Right. And I think it's probably just as important to stay involved in the policy-making process as it is to be involved in the electoral process, right? I mean, I think that's incredibly important. I know you all are doing that. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.
We are neighbors and best friends.
I love my sister.
My heart doesn't see race. Love is love.
Our family is no less than any other family.
Open
open road, here comes the Heffley family.
Whether it's a short trip or a long haul,
estimated time 47 hours.
they will beg.
You're hungry? I'm happy to provide.
They will plead.
Deep fried butter on a stick.
But whatever you do, don't wimp out.
Now you're talking.
Make them buckle up.
He can't hurt.
Remember, safety first. Cheese curls second.
Are you orange?
Eva Marie smoked 12,000 packs of cigarettes over 15 years. She quit, and now there's a new lung cancer screening that could save her life. You stopped smoking. Now start screening. No matter how much you've smoked, early detection could save you. Talk to your doctor or learn more at savedbythescan.org.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Lindsey Davis Stover, and we're finishing our show tonight with two badass women, Michelle Woolley and Candice Bennett, who are the hosts of Virginia's Badass podcast. And as we left the last segment, we were talking about all things Virginia, right? And what this last election really meant for our state. Can you talk a little bit more about this moment that we're in, both here and the Commonwealth and nationally? And do you think it has changed the fabric of our country and our state forever?
I think we're going to be evaluating that for a really long time, and I think we'll know more. I think we can tell, after 2020, I think we'll have a better sense of how that's impacting more broadly. I think it's been for women and the mobilization that happened post 2016. I think especially for folks maybe of our generation, I think maybe there was an earlier generation that had a little bit of that in a different way, and I think it's really mobilized people, and that's going to be a long-standing thing. And when I think about the children who are that are getting dragged, my child gets dragged to so many things with me right now.
Sure,
and
mine too.
Right?
Yes.
That's and there's a lot of those kids that are having, I think, that experience, and I think about what that means for them and the examples that they're kind of seeing on civic engagement, that there's just more people that are doing that now than maybe there were before, and the examples that they're having of all of these different women, men, people of color that are running for office. And I think that we're breaking down those barriers of what your stereotypical politician is right now, and that I think kids now have these examples, and it's okay, yeah, I'll run for that. I don't have to, I don't have to fit this mold, to be able to do that. And I look at Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and that all the women that because she's young and hip, and I think and she represents something different. And I think if I was 15 years old, looking at her I could do that too, and I think that's I think we're gonna be seeing that play out maybe as people, young people now grow up too, and how that they just kind of jump in.
I think it's interesting that you brought up our generation, because as we said before, all three of us were in the Emerge class together right after President Trump was elected. And there was a common theme for all of us and why we showed up, right? And it'll be interesting to see how that affects future generations. With more women running for office, I think more women are now being more active in campaigns and taking leadership roles in campaigns, where typically it was rare to see a woman manage a campaign. Right now, we're seeing it all over the country.
There's a high demand for women campaign managers right now. I could have 6 different campaign manager jobs if I had wanted to in this last cycle, and it's we need more of these, and that's awesome.
It is, because I do think it's important that women are engaged at every single level, right? I mean, that's how real change happens, and it's going to be interesting to see. When we look back on this moment, do we talk pre-President Trump and post-President Trump? How does that fit in, right, to our country's history and the precedents really we're setting for future generations?
There will be dissertations written about it.
Yes. Makes you want to go back to grad school, right?
No.
I'd go back to grad school, totally. I would totally be into that.
No, I would too.
No.
I would too.
No.
Now, you mentioned Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Are there other leaders that have emerged from this moment, really, that you admire, whether it's locally or nationally or both? I mean, who's kind of emerged from this moment that it's been fun to watch or that you admire?
I think my big three, at least in Virginia, are Abigail Spanberger, who is also in our Emerge class, and it's just been incredible to watch her, and I just think she's an incredible leader. Jennifer Carroll Foy, one of our state delegates. I mean, when you go, I feel like it's a transformational experience when I hear her speak. Like I feel like I've gone to had a religious experience or something. You know, she just gets me so fired up about things.
And incredible what she went through.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I mean, her story.
Oh, she's hard as nails. Like she's
incredible.
She is so tough. I mean, she is badass to the hilt, and she's amazing.
Inspiring. Yeah.
And I think Danica Rome is just. I mean, she knows, she is a nerd. She is such a nerd, but she makes it seem so much fun to be a nerd.
Oh, it is,
and it's just, I just say it's exciting when you're in the room with her because she's got her rock star kind of thing going on, from being in a metal band, and I think those are just they excite me in different ways, and it's fun to be around them.
And I love hearing her talk because you're right. She knows the depth of what she knows on each of these issues it's incredible. It's inspiring.
Well, she's a journalist, right? I mean, she has to dig into all these issues at the local level and has been following them for years. So she's great.
Incredible.
Again, all Emerge
alumni.
Yes, they are.
Right.
Yes.
That's right. I didn't think about that. That's great.
Yep.
They're great. Candice, tell us who has emerged, if you will, for you. Who do you admire at this moment right now?
Abby, definitely. Kamala Harris has definitely been one I've been watching for a few years. So I was excited to watch her, announce her candidacy. I think she is a badass. I'm just enjoying watching so many different women learn to find their voice. And again, it's just like Lisa Page saying, I am done being quiet. I've got something to say.
That's so important. And that speaks to something too that I'd love to touch on is women, we have so much power at the voting booth, right? I mean, when they're talking about the projections for 2020, they're looking at women voting, right? And we saw that happen over and over again. After 2016, it was women in so many different races that were the deciding factor. Talk a little bit how women can better discover their power within through this process.
I look at this, when I go to all these different, I've gone to a lot of different activist group meetings, and whether you're talking about Moms Demand Action or the indivisible groups or, whoever, there's a lot of women in those rooms and they are running stuff. And to me, it's this power in numbers. And when you get a bunch of women, determined women in a room that are like, nope, we're gonna fix this. And I think that's, you just take a piece of it, and then it's not that overwhelming, and it's in that camaraderie. I think that's, to me, is where women working together. I think that's part of why the Emerge program was so meaningful to all of us, was that sisterhood aspect. And I think, to me, that's in this moment, when we band together and nope, we're gonna get this done, and by sheer force of will. And I think that's where a lot of our power comes from.
Well, we've always had the power. I think back when in my days when I was working for Mark Penn, right, we were obviously doing nothing but polling. Polling, impeachment polling, actually, fun times. It's deja vu for me.
I bet.
Something else I could rage on. Anyway, but women have always been a majority of the voice in the polling booth. I just don't think they ever recognized it, right? We had these segments we call, the soccer moms, right? That was a big segment. They had to focus on these suburban moms and what kind of power they had. And I think that it is now that women are starting to self-actualize that power, right? You always had the power. You just needed to recognize that it was within you the whole time. I think about why I ran for office 4 years ago. It was kind of a little before this moment. But I had a friend. I was president of the Junior League of Northern Virginia, and we were doing an event, and I brought in Linda Paulson, who was the development director, I believe, for the Women's Campaign Fund at the time, and she was their keynote speaker. And she was talking about how still few women, right, are in these leadership positions. Here was 2013, and I was thinking about I graduated from high school in 1994, you're the woman coming into power in Washington, that wave that we had of how many women got elected for the first time, and it was so exciting. And then when you look 20 years later, how little had changed. I mean, like, we just plateaued. Like, we made it happen, and then nothing else happened. And so, and that was one of those moments when she was talking, and I had done a little training session with Emily's List, and just decided to do it. Right? It was, I hadn't really been involved in local politics at that point. Obviously, my experience had been at the national level. But if we don't start to acknowledge our own power, that you can just do it. Right? All it takes is just saying, I will give it a try, right? You don't, even if you're not going to win, just putting yourself out there, talking to people, getting the issues, bringing those issues to the forefront in a candidate forum, that makes a difference.
Absolutely.
So,
and you always hear it takes, 6 people to ask a woman to run before she actually does it. I can't remember that exact number, but it's like,
it's 6 or 7.
Big, right?
6 or 7, yeah.
I mean, ideally, it would be great to get to a place where nobody had to ask a woman to run, right? That women realize their own power and their own voice within, and the difference that they can make in other people's lives too. And hopefully that's what we'll eventually get to. Now, you are continuing to highlight women on your podcast, and you are giving women a voice, right? Talk about, what that means right now and why it is important. I mean, I know we discussed it a little bit in the first segment, but talk a little bit about why it's important that we continue to look for avenues and formats to give women additional voices.
Well, because, we want to burn down the patriarchy, right?
I was trying to prompt you into saying that. Yes. Thank you, Michelle.
I feel like that's my hobby. I put that on my Christmas card. I never got around to sending out last year. It was burning down the patriarchy. But, and it's just, we don't have to do these things through these already established channels. And I think that that's just important to be, forging these new openings and new paths, and you don't have to. It's it goes back even to this wait your turn. You don't have to do things in this certain step by step process, and we can do things differently. And I think that's part of it.
That's important. Yep. Well, tell us a little bit about the shirts that you're wearing. I was so excited to see the two of you come in with your shirts.
Our empowered women empower women.
Yep, absolutely.
Yes. So important.
And you have one of those too.
I do. I do.
We didn't tell you.
I do. But I think that is exactly what you're doing, right, on this podcast, and giving more women an opportunity to be empowered. Yep. And I think that's so incredibly important right now.
And a shout out to our Emerge Virginia classmate, Johanna Shin, that got the t-shirts.
Yes,
yes. And that we wear them all the time. But yeah, it's definitely important, if you're gonna, to be able to pull, other women along with you, so.
Well, and I think that's one thing from our Emerge class that I have been so excited to see is, one, how we've all pulled together, and we've all kind of pulled each other along when we've needed it too.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks to the power of women supporting women.
Yes.
We all do better when that happens.
We do.
Thank you for being with us this evening. Good night, and we'll see you next week.